Welcome to the module 4 where we are going to talk about Glue Crawler. So let's get started. Before I continue further, I just want to talk one more time that all these videos and labs are interconnected to each other. Especially if you want to complete the lab, you have to make sure you start from the lab 1 and then go in the sequence forward. Otherwise, it will be challenging for you to complete the lab. So please make sure you watch this video in sequence to get maximum out of it. So let's jump to the real topic. So we are going to talk about AWS Glue Crawler. So in the previous module, you saw that how you can create catalog, and you, in fact, in the lab created catalog manually. Well, that is good, but if you want to create that catalog automatically, then you have to use Glue Crawler. So Glue Crawler is a feature in AWS Glue which you can use to automatically create catalog for your data platform. And you need to do automatic cataloging because sometimes you have so many number of data sets that or data that you cannot, it's not manually possible to create and update the catalog. Sometimes you want to make automatic cataloging as a part of your pipeline. So as the data comes, you want to catalog it automatically as a part of the pipeline execution. So for many of those reasons, you need to catalog data automatically. And whenever it comes to cataloging data automatically, the best way to go is use AWS Glue Crawler. It is a serverless technology or serverless service. That means you pay for the time you run the crawler. So it's pretty straightforward. You have a data store and you simply run AWS Glue Crawler on that data store, and then all this crawler does is generates a schema and catalog about that data store. Now, Glue Crawler supports different types of data. Your data could be sitting into S3 bucket. It could be sitting inside DynamoDB in a NoSQL format. It could be a documents sitting inside document DB. Or you can also talk to various JDBC endpoints or relational databases such as the SQL Server, Oracle, MariaDB, Aurora, or even warehouse products like Amazon Redshift. All these different types of data stores are supported by Glue Crawler. Now, how does Glue Crawler identify the schema in the data? Because you are reading data from S3 bucket and your data could be in CSV format, could be in JSON format, could be XML, it could be Parquet format. Or if you're talking to data within a database, how does crawler know what is the format or schema of the data? And the feature or the service which helps crawler identify the schema is called classifier. So crawler uses classifier to automatically identify the schema or format of the data. Now, in most of the cases, when you configure a crawler, you don't need to specify any classifier. Glue Crawler automatically uses the suitable classifier to identify your data format and then simply generate schema for you. So in most cases, when you configure crawler, you don't configure classifier, and crawler simply uses out-of-box classifiers to classify your data, to generate a schema for your data. But sometimes it cannot, the out-of-box classifier cannot recognize your format. And in that case, it will simply say your schema is unknown. It does not know your schema, or it will generate your schema in wrong way. And in that case, your built-in classifiers are not sufficient and you might need to create custom classifier. So keep this in mind, that the approach should be that when you're trying to catalog your data, try to not specify any classifier, let Glue crawler automatically use a built-in classifier to classify your data. But if that classifier is not able to identify your data or generating wrong schema for your data, then in that case, you do have a choice to create your own custom classifier and use that into your Glue crawler. Tell your Glue crawler that use this custom classifier and then to catalog your data, to generate schema for your data. Now, your built-in classifiers there are many more, and few popular ones I listed over here, like your Evro, RC, Parquet, yeah, JSONs. Those are the or your JDBC data sources based classifier. These are the built-in classifier which you don't need to worry about. Your crawler will automatically use them. But if you want to create a custom classifier, you can create custom classifier for CSVs, XML, JSON, or you can use a very generic classifier like using grok pattern. Now, I'm not going to talk about custom classifier here a lot, but I do have advanced topic in module 8, which does talk about custom classifiers. So when you go to module 8, you will have one chapter or one slide talking about custom classifier, and then there you get chance to play with configuring some custom classifier. Here it's important to understand that in most of the cases you use built-in classifier, but if your built-in classifier is not able to do justice, is not able to do job, then in that case you have to use custom classifier. And this custom classifier you can configure, you can create. Now, when Glue crawler is talking to a JDBC data source or a database, so for instance, this is the Glue crawler talking to a JDBC data store to generate the crawler. Now, in order to talk to JDBC data store, your JDBC data stores are like login password based access, right? You like your S3 bucket is fine. Like in S3 bucket, you can have a role, IAM role, and IAM role can give you access to S3 bucket. But when you're talking to a JDBC data store, in that case, these databases, the database engines have their own login name and password to access. And you need to configure that login and password somewhere so that Glue crawler can use that login and password to access the databases, to then look into the tables and then generate schema for your tables. So for that purpose, it uses a feature called Glue Data Connection. In Glue, you can create a Glue Data Connection. And in that Glue Data Connection, you primarily provide two sets of information. One is what is the JDBC connection. And second is like what is the JDBC connection string and what is the credential or login and password you want to use. You can also provide some filter criteria like which database to look into, which tables to look into. Yeah, you can do that. But these two are the most important things you have to configure. And then Glue crawler can simply use this Glue data connection to connect to JDBC data store, look into schema of your table, and then generate a catalog for them. So keep this in mind. If you are working with JDBC data sources, then you have to work with Glue data connection. Okay, let's move on. So here we go. Going forward, then we are talking about how do I run Glue crawler. So Glue crawler, you can primarily run in three ways. First is on demand, and on demand you can run it from the console. You can go to AWS console and run from there. In fact, we are going to do that today. We will configure a Glue crawler and we'll run it from the console. You can also run a crawler through API call. You can use CLI or SDK call to run the crawler. Crawler also comes with its own schedule feature. So when you configure crawler, actually you can say, I want to schedule my crawler, and you can configure your crawler to run based on schedule. So suppose you want to run crawler once per day to check any updates to your schema, you can do that kind of configuration. Or the last one is you can also run your Glue crawler as a part of your pipeline or workflow. So if you're creating an ETL pipeline and like you want to ingest your data, then you want to crawl that data, then you want to transform your data and then crawl again. If you want to run that kind of pipeline, then in that case you can also configure Glue crawler as a part of pipeline. And I'm planning, there is a module, upcoming module, which talks about how to configure pipeline pipeline, and there we will run how to use Glue crawler with the pipeline. But these are the 3 methods you can use to run your Glue crawler. So enough talking. Let's do a lab. In this lab, what we are going to do, that we are going to launch Amazon RDS database, and then we will configure a crawler to catalog table created inside this RDS database. So let's get started. So here I am on in the AWS Management Console. I am in the Ireland region, and I'm using Ireland region for my all the labs, and I recommend you to do the same, so that feature-wise, services-wise, we don't have any kind of incompatibility. And again, you can follow me this lab when I'm doing. Simply follow what I'm doing, and we can complete the lab together. Then I have logged in using an AWS user account, which is administrative user over here. I already provided you some lab files, and lab files, if you unzip, look like this kind of folder structure. I have provided link for the lab files in the description box below as well. In this lab file, you have to use this folder 4. So all the resources for this lab are in this folder 4. Basically, we have 2 resources here. One resource is a PDF file which you can use to create an RDS instance. So in my lab, I have already created an RDS instance, but I have provided you instructions, and you can use these instructions to create your own RDS instance. And then I have another script which you can use to create a table and ingest some data into your database table. So we will come to those parts later, but yeah, please make sure that you have this folder 4 in the lab open, and you are already logged into AWS console. So let's start one by one. So first thing first, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to IAM Management Console, and in IAM Management Console, I'm going to create a role. And this role will then be used by Glue crawler to run. So whenever you run a Glue job or Glue crawler, it needs a role. So a role to set the permission. So in this case, I'm going to first create a role. So I go to roles. Then I click on say I can create a role. Okay. And this is a role for Glue. So I click on Glue. Let's set up the permission. And the permission I want to give is, there's an out-of-box service policy which is called AWS Glue service policy, service role. So you can see that there's an out-of-box policy, AWS Glue service role. This policy provides all the basic permissions required for the crawler. So I'm simply going to select this AWS Glue service policy for the policy of the role. I'm going to skip the tagging part for now, go to review last page, and then I'm going to give my role a name, Dojo crawler role. So pretty straightforward. I'm going to create a role for Glue service called Dojo crawler role, and this role has a permission Glue service role. And this is this role I'm going to use with my Glue crawler. So I create the role. And a role should be created in no time. Now that my role is ready, remember we have in the lake formation already created a database, and in database, in fact, we have already created a catalog table which we created manually in the previous lab. Now what I'm going to do, since crawler will be creating this table into the same database, this crawler needs permission on that database so that it can create table in that database. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lake formation now, and I will open the database, and then in that database I will give permission for this role to be able to create table. So let's do that. And remember, we talked about all these permissions in one of the previous module, that what kind of database or table label permission you need if you want to access data in lake formation. So here we go. We have a database which already created in the previous module, and that's why I'm saying that you have to do these labs in continuation, in the sequence. Then only you will able to complete any of the labs. And we are so we have already created a table in the previous lab. So in this database, I need to give permission to this glue crawler role, this glue dojo crawler role. I need to give permission on this database so that it can create table. So I simply select my database in lake formation, click on grant, and here I select dojo crawler role. So this role I want to give permission, and on this database, and I simply select create table as a permission. So pretty straightforward. What I'm saying is that this dojo crawler role on this database has got a create table permission, that when the crawler runs with this particular role, the crawler will be able to create table, catalog table in this database. So that crawler has got a permission now. This crawler role has got a permission on the database now. So this part is done. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an RDS database instance. So I go to RDS. In fact, I'm not going to create it. I have already created it in order to save the time. But what I recommend you is that let me open this particular PDF file. I think I have not already opened it. So let me open this particular PDF file. And I recommend that you simply follow this PDF file. So you can see here this PDF file. This PDF file has all the instructions you need to follow to create a data like RDS instance for this lab. So simply my request to you is that you might want to pause the video, open this particular PDF file, and follow the instructions given in the PDF file to create the RDS database instance. And once you create the RDS database instance, then you can unpause the video and can continue the lab. So let's assume that you have already created an RDS database instance. So if you go to your Ireland region and then look into your database instances, you can see a Dojo database instance, which is a Aurora PostgreSQL serverless database instance created. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect to this instance. I'm going to create a table in this instance, and we'll also insert some seed data into that. Okay. For that, I have already shared one script with you. So if you go to again lab folder, fourth folder, you have a SQL script which is going to provide you a script to create the table and also insert the data. So that script looks something like this. So you can see here that you create an employees table, and then that has got like 3 fields, and then you simply insert some seed data into it. So let's do that. So for that, I'm going to first connect to my query editor. And then in that case, I'm going to select my database instance. If you're doing it first time, you have to click on say add a new credential. But in my case, let me do that thing, add a new credential. Then what is my database username? My database username is Postgres. Then what is your password? Password I have already shared as a part of that PDF file, so simply provide the password. And what is my database name? So my database name is also Postgres. So simple, I select my database instance. I want to add a new database credential. My database username is Postgres. I provide the password as given in the PDF file. And then I also provide the database name. And then I simply connect to database. And it will connect in no time. So you can see I have already connected. I don't want to save this thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to first copy this create table SQL. statement, and I'm going to run this to create my table first. So I'm creating an employees table to my Postgres database. So I simply do that, and it should be, oops, successful. Okay, something went wrong. Let me try again. Yeah. Okay, it has been successful now. Now I'm going to do the second one, which is simply inserting couple of rows into my database. So I simply copy the second SQL statement. I go again here in the SQL editor. I copy paste my insert statements over here and simply run it. And all the 8 rows are inserted. So we are good. And if I simply verify it here, saying okay, select star from employees, I should be able to see a table with 3 columns and 8 rows. Yeah, all good, all good. So my database part is ready. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to Glue, and in Glue I'm going to create a crawler which can crawl this database table. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that if you are trying to crawl a database table, you need to connect to database, and in order to connect to database, you need to create a database connection. So first thing we have to do is we have to create a database connection, and then we simply configure a Glue crawler which will simply run and do the job for us. So let's go to the connections in the left hand side menu in the Glue console. Go to the connections menu, click on add connection. I will name it say RDS data connection. Now what type of connection it is? So I can connect to various types of sources. In this case, actually I'm connecting to a JDBC endpoint. I can simply say I'm connecting to a JDBC endpoint and go next. What is my JDBC URL? So this is my connection string we have to provide, and connection string, there's a format given over here. If you look at the bottom, it says JDBC : protocol, then your host name, then port, then database name. So we need to provide a connection string like that. So let me simply copy paste connection string in my case. So in my case, this is how the connection string look like, and you might take your own time to construct that, but let me walk you through that. So you have a standard JDBC, then colon, then you have PostgreSQL, then colon hyphen. Then you provide your database instance. This is your database instance name. So if you go to your RDS console, you can see your database instance name, fully qualified database instance name. That name you have to copy paste over here. Then you have to provide the port. Port is 5432, and then you have to provide the database name, which in this case is Postgres. So I simply provide the JDBC connection. Then I provide my username, which in this case is Postgres. My password is as provided into the PDF file. So let me make sure I'm providing it right. And then I go next and say click on VPC. I'm using default VPC because my database is in default VPC. So I'm simply using that. I can choose one of the subnets. And I'm simply going to use the default security group because that default security group is something used by my database. So pretty straightforward configuration again. You provide your JDBC connection, username, password, your VPC, your subnet, and your default security. One of the subnets, I mean. You can choose any because database is spread across all 3 subnets, and simply like your cluster. And I simply finish it. So now my connection is ready, and one of the best practices is when you create the connection, test the connection to make sure it is all configured properly. You have your login name, password, everything configured properly. So for that, you simply select your connection, click on test connection. It will ask which IAM role to use. In this case, we are simply going to use Dolo's crawler role, which simply created in the earlier steps. And I click on the test connection. Now it's going to take a couple of minutes to test the connection to confirm us back whether it is able to connect to the database. So let's wait till it succeeds. Okay, so the connection is successful. So you can see that my connection is connected successfully. That means I'm all good to connect to database. That means I have network path to the database, and I have got my login name, password, database name, everything is correct. So that part is covered. Now I'm going to create a crawler. So for that, I go to my crawlers menu on the left hand side. I want to add a crawler. I simply give my crawler name, say RDS crawler. Okay, and then I click on next. Here I simply say I'm going to use crawler as a data store. I'm going to crawl a data store. And if it is S3, then I want to crawl all the folders, but well, I'm not going to use S3 anyway. Then here I have to select my data store type or which data store. So in this case, my data store is JDBC. And then the moment you select JDBC, it says, okay, tell me which connection you want to use to connect. And I simply provide my RDS data connection as the connection over here. So by this configuration, my crawler knows which connection to use to connect to my database. So yeah, it's simply using that. Then I provide my database name, my include path. How do I filter? So I can simply put like percentage over here saying, hey, include everything, or I can also put here saying I can put my things like database / schema / table. I can really provide which objects I want to catalog. So in this case, I want to keep it pretty straightforward. All I'm saying is that look into my public database, and everything you find into my public database, you simply crawl it. And to be honest, at this point of time, so not public, look into my Postgres database, and everything you find under my Postgres database, you simply crawl it. And to be honest, I'm like, Progress has got only one table at this point of time. So I simply create the include path, say next. Do you want to add another test store? No. Which IAM role to use? So again, I'm providing crawler the IAM role, and this IAM role has permission to create a table inside my database, in my catalog database, which we simply configured in one of the previous steps. Simply select next. Again, I can configure, I can schedule it here, like, and I want to run it on demand for the lab purposes. Which database you want to create the table? I simply provide my Dojo database name over here. Next, and I finish it. Now my crawler is configured. I can now select the crawler and run the crawler. And when I run the crawler, actually it's going to catalog my database. So it's going to take a couple of minutes actually to finish cataloging. Let's wait till the crawler finishes the execution. Okay. So you can see my crawler is stopping now. So, and it has already created one table for me. So you can see table added is 1. So I can go to my tables, and I can see if I refresh it, I should be able to see Postgres public employees table created. Now I can check schema here as well, but let's go to lake formation and check schema from there. So I go to lake formation, and in lake formation, I can go to my tables, and I can see my Postgres public table, public employees table over here. Click on that, and then you can see here it has simply cataloged my table. This is my PostgreSQL table. Then it has identified 3 columns and their data types. So you can see it has simply cataloged my data. And you learn how to configure such cataloging. Now we will catalog few more data in the coming labs, and you will learn like cataloging the S3 type of data as well. So that was the lab activity today, to how to create a crawler which is simply cataloging an RDS database table. Now we are going to next topic, which is about revisiting data catalog again, and we will talk about some of the more features about Glue catalog, which is important to know, and we will also complete some of the labs related to that. So Thank you very much for watching this module. See you again in the next module. Bye-bye.